This story was often told by my grandmother. She shared it with everyone in the family, and it happened in her village in a central state of the country, just after the middle of the last century. The Berlanga family was one of the wealthiest in the area, the richest in the village. People said they had many businesses in the big cities of the country. But for some reason they chose to continue living in the village, where they had an enormous estate, truly immense. From the entrance you had to travel several more kilometers to reach the mansion, and from there they ruled with the power of their money, even though they never got involved in politics. In the village there were always, how to put it, strange disappearances. At first it was occasionally a man. It was always rumored that they had gone north to work. But then a young man would disappear, always leaving without notice. In time, young girls began to disappear too, then children, and eventually some entire families. People started to worry, living in fear. Stories of witches and ghosts coming at night to take the inhabitants of the area began to be told discreetly, with much fear, in the conversations of the elderly women, but none of that was close to the truth. On one occasion, a farmer was traveling with a load of chili peppers to a big city, said to be Guadalajara. A few kilometers from the Berlanga estate, a 12-year-old girl ran onto the road asking for help. The farmer, frightened and shocked, let her get in, and one of his assistants who was riding in the back came forward to help her. She was covered in wounds, bites, deep bites, with marks that seemed to be from human teeth, some small and others large. When they cleaned her, they touched her shoulder and the girl cried out in pain. When they uncovered it, they were horrified to see that a large chunk of flesh had been torn from her shoulder, a very deep piece. The mark was from an enormous, grotesque mouth with crooked teeth. They sped up. The girl kept urging them to flee, not to go to the village for any reason, because the police would not help them. In the city they spoke with the local police. It is said that she spoke with none other than Miguel Lehmann a few weeks before he took office as president. Hundreds of police officers arrived in my grandmother's village. They entered the Berlanga estate heavily armed, where the workers resisted. The estate workers all fiercely defended the family, even the maids attacked the authorities as they entered. They claimed they seemed like wild animals and wouldn't stop fighting until they were shot multiple times. What they found there left them horrified, making headlines in the newspapers of the time. Hundreds, literally hundreds of half-eaten bodies. Elderly, men, women, children. Children so young they could barely walk had been devoured. At some point years before, the family had decided to push their power to the limit. Not content with exploiting the villagers and becoming rich at their expense, they had begun to become fascinated with tasting them, devouring them, performing horrendous, monstrous rituals in which they ate them alive bit by bit while another group of victims watched in terror, waiting for their turn. The girl who managed to escape had been captured along with her sister when it was their turn to participate in the ritual. Both fought with all their might to save themselves. The older sister, about 14 years old, fiercely attacked Miguelito, the youngest of the Berlanga, and gouged out one of his eyes while he bit her sister like a beast. Amidst the confusion and the boy's cries of pain, she managed to escape. The punishment for the other was the most painful and cruel death at the hands of Miguelito and the rest of the Berlanga. When the police arrived, the young girl was still agonizing, hanging by her wrists. The family had been eating her little by little for 2 days. They had devoured her from her feet up to her thighs. The police took away the surviving members of the Berlanga family. The villagers took it upon themselves to lynch 2 or 3 estate workers who survived the shootout. But the Berlanga were never prosecuted, never judged for their crimes. Only Don Abel, the patriarch of the family, an elderly man of almost 70 years, but nothing more was ever heard about the others. My grandmother recounts that decades later, in the 90s, when she returned to the village, the children claimed that among the ruins of the estate, sometimes a man with an eye patch could be seen walking, tales likely fueled by this story that continues to be told in the community. I am curious to think about how much it cost the Berlanga for their freedom, in which city or town they went into hiding, and if they continued their macabre rituals. Even today, I think of them every time I see news in the papers about people who have disappeared.